In 2016, the keeper of muniments in Westminster Abbey discovered a tin box that had many loose papers in it. Among the loose papers, he found a copy of a manuscript written by John Donne. The manuscript is called The Courtier's Library, and it's a catalog of books that he made up. He made up for the purposes of satire. And what was going on is that King James I had very scholarly interests. And so suddenly appearing to be a person of scholarship was a way of advancing oneself in society. And so there was a lot of lack of humility, intellectual humility. There was a lot of bad scholarship. There was a lot of vanity around writing. And John Donne wrote this satire to skewer that. One of the famous figures of his time was a famous diplomat named Sir Edward Hobey, who would drink way too much at lunch and then just talk and talk. And so one of the books that's on the list is Sir Edward Hobey's Afternoon Belchings, or a treatise of univocals, as of the king's prerogative and imaginary monsters such as the king's evil and the French disease. So this was a real person, and the book was attributed to him. Another real person that John Donne attributed a book to was Matthew Sutcliffe, who was the Dean of Exeter. And this is the book that he included in the catalog. What Not, or A Refutation of All the Errors, Past, Present, and Future, not only in theology, but in the other branches of knowledge and the technical arts, of all men, dead, living, and as yet unborn, put together in a single night after supper by Dr. Sutcliffe. Now, not long after Donne wrote this, he panicked because he was worried that it would fall into the wrong hands, or that someone would see it for what it was, which was a subtle criticism of the new intellectual culture that was emerging in the new king's reign. Something that was even more serious that John Donne wrote was a book called Biathanatos. In this book, it means in Greek a violent death. And it was actually a defense of suicide. He basically said that people commit suicide because they're out of fear, out of self-protection, out of just loss of mind. And so what he was trying to say is that it's a much more natural instinct than people might realize, that many of us have thought about taking our own life at one point or another. And this was a really scary book to write because suicide was illegal in England at the time. And if you were caught trying to take your own life, you could be tortured and killed. And if they found your body as somebody who had taken his own life, they would actually bury you at the crossroads with a stake through your chest to make sure that your spirits didn't rise and haunt people. So it was a very dangerous book to write, and Donne wrote it. And as soon as he wrote it, he knew that he could be in a lot of trouble, that it could end his career, end his life even. And so he sent it to a very dear friend who kind of kept it hidden until the end of John Donne's life. Now, John Donne was in many ways the most famous cathedral dean of all time. He was a great poet, a great thinker. When people came to his sermons, hundreds would flock to his sermons. They would actually bring a quill and ink to be able to take notes on what he said. People would debate about it and share their notes with other people. He was tremendously powerful in his oratorical skill, and the reason why he was able to communicate so deeply and profoundly with people was because he took risks. He said dangerous things. He put things together that other people might not put together. He made his language vivid. One of my favorite things is his work as a poet. And his poetry, certainly, I mean, it's so sexual and sensual in nature. I can easily imagine what it must have been like for people of his time to know that the Dean of St. Paul's London had written these poems. So I'm going to close with a poem that John Donne wrote. It's one that many of us may have heard. It's called To His Mistress Going to Bed, and I'm only going to read a short section to just show how bold John Donne was. License my roving hands and let them go, before, behind, between, above, below. Oh, my America, my newfound land, my kingdom, safeliest when with one man manned, my mine of precious stones, my empire, how blessed am I in this discovering of thee. Well, John Donne, the most famous cathedral dean of all time and poet, I hope that you find in his work and in his boldness an encouragement to be bold yourself, to not always be concerned about saying the right thing, but to be brave enough to speak the truth and to speak it in vivid ways. My name is Malcolm Clemens Young. I'm the Dean of Grace Cathedral here in San Francisco, California. Thanks for watching. More good news.